Well, we'll wait another minute or two and see if we get on Dr. Kelly and Ms. Jones.
You know, I would probably lobby for the to start with the talking points, since I do have to be off at 6.
Well, actually, I would like to do just nothing but talk about the upcoming meeting, and the talking points can be part of that. That's fine with me. We can sort of dispense with old business unless someone is just dying to do something about it.
I think it's fine for us to just say the special meeting was called to deal with organizing the presentation to the.
Right. On the other hand, from my point of view, because it's a special meeting, I always put in more than I need, because you never know, because once you have a special meeting, you can't add to the agenda. That's the rule.
So why don't you just call the meeting to order and we'll start?
Okay, let's do that. So let me start by saying that we have everybody here with the exception of Maggie and Sarah, and hopefully they will join us. Are you there, Victor, still?
Eddie'd be right back.
I am, but I was on mute. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm here.
So let me, we'll dispense with the minutes from last meeting. And I don't think we have anybody else on board for public comments or announcements. Hello, Sarah. Glad to see you here.
Hey, how is everyone? Wow, what a great picture of Victor. There he is.
Natural.
Better than the real one, believe me. I've been shaved for days. I'm sparing you the pain.
Okay.
There you go.
So let me start by saying that Jesse and I just finished a Zoom, almost a 45-minute Zoom conversation with John Burt and with the mayor. We wanted to get a sense of what they would like from us next week on Tuesday, December 8th. And so I think we got a sense of that. They are eager, they believe the council is eager to hear what we have to say. And they thought that the council would be wanting to ask a bunch of questions about what we're doing and what we found out. And I think that was very positive. They had nothing negative to say. They thought there was nothing that would be off the table. And in fact, they encourage us to speak our mind on this whole matter. So I think that was very positive. Anything you want to add to that, Jesse?
No, I think the caveat around that is that they would like us to send as much of our report, our findings as we can to the town council before that meeting, so that they have some sense where they might like to ask questions. So to your point, Frank, if you come up with sort of things out of the work that you and Maggie did, are there things that we can bullet? Maybe not the actual PowerPoint we would present, but maybe it is to send to them so that they have an opportunity to think ahead rather than to have to respond immediately that night to what.
I was pretty clear that we would do what we could, but there was no guarantees of having anything in a sort of a final written form. Happy to do a PowerPoint, but beyond that, I didn't.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a report, but it's just, this is.
So so it's clear to everybody.
When would they like to have that, Jess?
Tomorrow, but John immediately said if we got it to him by Monday, that would be sufficient.
Yeah, so we have until Monday to get that in to them in a written form so they can have it before them. Okay, so you got two documents from me this afternoon. The first was a sort of my stream of consciousness as I look back over what we've done over the last year. And it's really pretty skimpy, but I think outlines basically where we've been and where we're sort of headed. And I went through that with, in general, with the manager and the mayor. And I think I can clearly put that into a couple of PowerPoint slides and could cover all of that pretty briefly. I would propose that we leave out anything about the federal or the state of Connecticut information that's contained in here. However, I will prepare slides just in case the issue does come up in their questions and answers. And then I sort of reviewed what we have found, which is that there's a lot of paper sitting on shelves throughout the town of Groton. And most of those have been prepared by outside consultants. They're long, they're detailed, but no one has been around to basically really follow up with getting something really done. And I think there's ample evidence of that. I think you all have seen this. And then I went on to say the task force is working on very specific areas and listed the coastal issues with Frank and Maggie, health and COVID with Victor and Sarah, energy with Jesse, the built environment with Jesse, and then transportation with me, and that there are other issues that we haven't really had a conversation about, and that those would be under further review. And then the bottom line is, I think it's pretty clear to, I think, the group, and if you feel differently about this, you need to say this, we've got really two priorities. One is get the greenhouse gases under control. That's number one, because that has a huge impact going forward. And two, that our immediate acute crisis outside of the COVID, and I say that very carefully, outside the COVID, but relates to climate change, is what happens along our coastline, which Frank and Maggie have very clearly talked about. The third item that I think we need to emphasize is that we need to have a full-time senior person who sits in the manager's office and who will coordinate across all of the silos that exist in the town of Groton. And we're prepared to talk about why that's important and how that will ultimately benefit the town, both economically, but also from a climate change / quality of life point of view. That's my less than 6-minute presentation right there with slides. What do you all think?
Well, my immediate reaction is that unless you think that the council is really up to speed about what specifically resiliency and sustainability covers, I would start with that before you go talk about the fact that there's been a lot of work done in the town already on these issues, just so that at least everybody's up to speed as to what kinds of, what the issues are, such as flooding and so on. And I mean, unless you think it's just obvious to them already, that's probably where you might want to start rather than getting into the more specific things that you mentioned just now.
Any comments about that?
No, absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree with that point.
And
Could I also make a comment, and I want Victor should also speak to this point, is I don't think that you should phrase our section as about COVID. I mean, I think what we've talked about is that there are learnings from the COVID experience that apply to sustainability and resilience, but we
Good.
have not studied COVID as
No.
part of the task force.
Good
Right.
point. Good
Yeah.
point. I will make sure.
I'm sure Victor has an opinion about this and will probably have a more eloquent way of putting it than I do, but
No, I completely agree with that. I think you can say that if you want an example of where we have not been neither resilient nor sustainable is with a crisis that showed some fault lines in our preparedness. But we have learned, and we plan to apply lessons learned going forward to other aspects of related to climate change. I think that's right on, Sarah.
Okay, to Sarah and Victor, I will simply mention that health is one of those major considerations we've talked about. And I'll turn it over to you to basically do the 2-minute PowerPoint presentation that you feel is
called our bluff.
No,
Take three.
that-
no
Give it
good
three.
deed goes unpunished.
You like that, Sarah?
Yeah, yeah, no problem. We'll just
No
knit
problem.
together a slide summary.
Well, actually, that gets to what I was going to ask at the outset. How do you see this going? You do your 4.5 minutes up to the bottom of review where it says the task force is currently working on actions that Groton might consider. And then you break into, for example, coastal issues.
Yes.
And I'll do 2 slides for 2-3 minutes and then health issues, so forth.
Well, I think for example, your slides on flooding of Groton Long Point and your slide of maybe Mystic or alternatively of Jupiter Point, not do them all, but say, here's the examples.
Right. That's what you're thinking. And we were that, and then at the end, you would then summarize after us with those 2 bullets.
Yep.
Yes, Frank, and this is, I think, why we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
That's the findings, that's the reality of what we know is coming. What would be your top recommendations or priorities in terms of addressing those?
Okay.
Because I think
Can I ask a question? Are we going to present recommendations at this meeting? I think it is maybe a little premature, unless we preface it by saying that these are our leading thoughts based on what we've learned, based on this. We present this for your reaction and your consideration, but we will prepare something more definitive, because while these may be the items, they need to be prioritized, and that requires additional thinking. I think it would be premature for us to say anything in the way of a recommendation that would be in the records and so forth. And I don't know if we're ready for that.
recommendation might not be the right word, and Zell and I talked about this after we met with Patrice and John, is that the range of ways in which to address these challenges they run the gamut from things that are, hey, we just abandoned Groton Long Point, to this, and this. We haven't focused, and we would like your input. And that's very true in the parts that I worked on. And so I think it's a combination. And I liked Mickey's thing about going back to resilience and sustainability, because both of those need to establish goals. What is our resilience goal? What is sustainability, and what can we do to do that? Because we can't do everything. And so these areas following on that could, embrace ideas from here to here. We're not saying this is the be all and end all of what they are. So it's sort of a cross between recommendations, but to give them an idea. If we just talk in the stratosphere, they're not going to have any idea what we might actually be recommending.
Well, I think that's really important because remember, what we're trying to do is to make sure they hire someone at a senior level to manage a lot of this. And they're having a hard time figuring out what this person actually might do. And so giving them specifics on one hand, doesn't have to be all fleshed out, but that'll give them some idea of what this person would be doing for the community. But I don't, no promise was made at all about having anything final for next Tuesday at all.
Yeah, Zell, you can have my slide on the definitions of resilience and sustainability and
Yes.
adaptability. I agree completely with Victor. I think what we're doing right now is introducing ourselves to the council and providing some examples of the areas that we are focusing on. Because I hope you realize and know that I think we have to be very careful in bringing out these recommendations, findings in our dealings with some of the town departments, planning in particular. So I think it would be very premature if we brought out a series of recommendations without a discussion in planning. And it may be Public Works as well should be involved in that. And in my case, for example.
Well, I think you're right in that, but I think there are some things that, for example, Jesse can say about getting energy audits free for low-income people and moderate-income people makes perfect sense, and it should have no impact upon the planning department other than to have people think about what the issues are. So I think you're absolutely right about that. I also made the point that to both the manager and the mayor that we want to focus at this point on what the town can do for the town government can do for itself. In other words, it as an entity, as opposed to having suggested things such as you can't build in the floodplain, which directs the public what they can do, partly because the public, and the only way to interact with the public right now is through Zoom. And those kinds of discussions are going to have to be in face-to-face meetings over a long period of time.
I actually think what you just raised, Frank, is probably a step that we hadn't really anticipated, which I think we should, after we have this meeting with the town council, that we should revisit those departments, follow up on the meetings we had with them at the very early part, and talk about what we think the potential actions and way of moving forward is with them, and get some reaction from them.
Right.
Yeah, or even I'd take your idea a step further, Jesse, and say that, you know, what Victor and I had talked about in the health section was a template where you would ask them for some members of the council to work with, as well as, you know, folks from the departments to actually sit down with us to proactively go forward and work out the recommendations together. Because I think we're right, the specifics aren't going to be there. The specific details of and ideas we've got to work with the departments on.
Well,
I think we can, just to follow up on Sarah's comment, we can let them know, and we will, based on some of the drafts and you know, Frank's slides and your write-up, Zell, that we have fleshed out sort of the universe of themes that we need to be paying attention to. But in order to prioritize realistically, we need your input, and we need town officials' inputs, and that will be our next phase. But I think we need to convey to them that we have examined the entire scope of impacts that we need to address, both resilience and sustainability.
well, I would characterize not only examined, but both the characteristics, but also what the opportunities are. And because I think that's really going to be important to sell this to the public and to the town, that this provides some opportunities.
Yeah. And speaking of selling this, Zell, this is a very first pass reaction to the document, talking points to the meeting, one of the two documents. I think there's excellent contents here. I just read between the lines a little bit of frustration. For example, this has been sitting on shelves. I don't think we should say that. I think to date, no town stand has been assigning to the overall respect. These are indictments that are that I think can be counterproductive. There is enough sort of upbeat material here that says we've made progress, especially on energy efficiency, blah, blah, blah. You have a lot of content here that it says we're not like hopeless. I just want to, that is my reading between the lines of the sentiment of this document. And I think we just need to be careful not to.
I agree with being careful up to the following point. I've been at this for 10 years.
Yeah,
And-
but the council has not. The council.
I know that, but members of the council, in particular the mayor and the manager, realize exactly this.
Well, but
So,
I think, I mean,
I may not use the word sit upon a shelf.
yeah.
I want there to be some level of frustration. And I also want to be clear that they have to own this, and they don't own it right now.
I would leave the frustration for us to experience it, but I would not, I don't think it's constructive.
Yeah,
Okay,
productive,
okay.
productive.
Any other views?
I think it is important. The trick is, I agree completely with the buying. Having been on too many groups that bring together what are great ideas, and they don't go anywhere because the audience really hasn't bought into it. So the trick is how you get the council. And it sounds like the mayor and the town manager are certainly in our court and on our side. And so that's a good start. And we're going with them. We'll recommend that there are a number of reports and studies out there that lay the foundation for this work. And it was our task, if I recall correctly, when we look at the charge to the committee, was to, a task force was to bring some of those up to date, bring some of the recommendations out into the present arena. And that's what we're doing. I'm as frustrated as anyone when I look back at a box of stuff that I have sitting here and say, we have to say this again? Well, maybe we do. And we can leave it lie for a minute. If we go in carefully and curry the favor of the council and the partnership of the council, it's the only way you're gonna get anything done.
Okay,
Right.
one other piece of information you need to know is that basically Patrice said there are other people in the council who feel the way we do. Now, she didn't say whether it's 3 or 4 or 5 people, but there are apparently others on the council who have the same frustration. So I mean, part of who we're talking to indirectly is to the town staff, which is that this hasn't gone real well the way it's been organized and managed, and it's time for people to step up to the plate. So we've got to be careful how we do it, but I mean, Patrice sort of, and so did John, laughing at, particularly at me, saying, well, we know you're going to tell us what you think. And so they kind of expect us to be pretty straightforward with them.
Yeah,
I think that it's clear that our punchline, our main request at this point is to get some staff to do this. And so, I think that you can, instead of saying that the town agencies have to step up to the plate, which sounds like maybe we're saying that they've been not stepping up to the plate, and they feel that they've been maybe stomping on the plate. Anyway, the point is that they may feel that, I think we can instead say that we know that the staff has looked at some of this stuff and have put together some plans, but it's clear that that we need to provide a person to actually do some of this work, because I think it's also has to be clear that this is not, we're not one of those task force that's going to go out and sweep the streets. You know, I mean, we're making recommendations, but we're not the worker bees. And so I think, Zell, it is a little bit of a tightrope walk, but you know, I do think that the pitch has to be, that the takeaway message, I guess, has to be that if anything's going to get done, the town council has to put some resources into this, i.e. hire someone to sweep the streets.
I think that's the perfect introduction, Mickey, that what we say, it's fine to say the town has.
Jesse, get closer to your computer.
The town, I think it's the perfect introduction to sort of reference the town has a lot of good documentation and planning in place for things that ought to happen to address sustainability and resilience. They have made limited progress on that because we don't have somebody whose primary task is to do that. And so our first recommendation is the hiring of a full-time senior level person to oversee the work going forward, because a lot of what we're recommending has been recommended before, but it hasn't happened. And then to go into the specific areas, and in particular, in this area, these are the priorities, and this, whatever, or of things that.
I mean,
I think the carrot on the big carrot is that if you have somebody on the staff who's also looking at funding sources, there can be a lot of piggybacking. You know, what do they call that? You know, we can get a lot of resources put into the town with what's the word that they always use?
Leverage.
Leverage. Yeah.
yeah, no, I think your points are well taken, and I will be very careful about that. I mean, I just would make the other point, which I pretty subtly put in there. I said, these have been prepared by outside consultants. And that tells you a lot about whether people are really got the skin in the game. When you have someone outside telling you what to do and you didn't write it, then you don't own that quite the way you do if you have to write it. Having someone on the staff who will work with people to get these things so that the staff owns the activity, then we are where we want to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if you would have time, but to point out, we've already been introduced to the town council, but to point out when in going with Mickey's earlier recommendation about an introduction, these are the areas. We have health and human health, we have transportation, we have public works, we have blah, 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 all of that. And to say, we have in this task force people who have quite a bit of experience in those areas, but we are not multi-thousand paid consultants that are in a position to write those kinds of reports. So if the town owns it, we would have the task force provide expertise and guidance and consultative. But I think we sit sort of in between just a lonely person in the town and an outside consultant for $200,000.
Well, wait a second, I don't understand the last point you made.
The last point I made is that we are not climate change consultants, but we have a significant amount of expertise, you know, like you, Zell, and Jesse and Sarah and Frank and Mickey. Everybody has a substantial amount of content and subject matter expertise, but we do not have the bandwidth to write a report that a consultant for a very high fee. So
Okay, That's fine. I agree. We are not going to write the report. They're going to write the report. We're going to act as consultants to help steer the process, whether it be with the
The more important issue that we're going to help people pragmatically agree on next steps. And, whether you want to call it a 3, 5, and 30-year plan or a 3,
Mhm.
5, 10, 30, whatever you want to do as your time horizon. But you want a multi-layered plan that emerges from this, right? That then
Hopefully,
puts you in a position to get funding as it opportunistically becomes available.
exactly.
No.
Well, see, I think if you put priorities together and say this is what we're going to do, and all of a sudden funding comes up for a $500,000 grant to work on a particular area, you go with it. I mean, it may not have been your first priority, but if it was your third priority, you substitute that in
Exactly.
because you got to be on your game here with respect to getting outside funding.
So to me, Zal, what would be important as an outcome from the council meeting is that we agree on a process moving forward to work both with council members who wish to be engaged and involved in the work and with the department heads or whatever the appropriate term is that you want on how to assemble this kind of rolling list of recommendations that work for those departments and that kind of pull together then a plan.
Yeah. Now there's a third group that there's two other groups we got to bring along. One is Joe Q Public, and the second is all of the commission members from planning, zoning, inland wetlands, and it goes on and on and on like that. There's the advisory committee for the town sewer system. All those people have to be brought along with this because some of those people, for example, planning and zoning, have very powerful positions.
Mhm. Zell, I'm just reminded in the conversation of, and I apologize for being slow on the pickup here. Um, Thinking back what Victor was saying about recommendations being a little bit too early and the frustration issue. Recall what I wrote, the first paragraph of what I wrote. And there was a bit of frustration in that, I'll admit, but it could be easily taken out or reinterpreted. We point to the history, the fact that a fair amount of work in this subject area has been accomplished, but what is lacking is the action. We have lots of recommendations, and there has been limited action. And we're looking at the action stage in more detail. Why wasn't there more action? We can point to the absence of staffing, resources and staffing. Remember, we heard from many of the departments that it was dollars and cents as much as not having the manpower. There was also a matter of priority. And then, so from that, I think that leads very nicely into what we're talking about here and going at the subject areas as we go down. And in each of the subject areas, we could think of the town departments that are the other committees for that matter. We heard the other day of the open space plan from conservation. So conservation's got to be involved in all of this. And it would, and the need for the development of the will of the town. So we're incorporating, bringing together not only the council, but the citizenry of the town for action. I mean, that was my logical flow in trying to write that. I don't know whether it came across or not, but that's what I was trying to say.
I think it did.
Matrix.
Jesse, move closer.
I'm sorry. I think it does, Frank, very much. And I think that's why we talked at our last meeting about using the outline in a way that you set forward as a matrix for inserting the other more specific things from those different areas.
Right.
And I don't think we want to present that next week because I think the goal then is to sort of do that in our minds for each of us. And we promised Patrice and John, that this would not be endless, to come up with 3 slides in the areas that we're talking about. We're not going to get into great detail.
No.
You know, the first sentence could run the gamut from this, or I think each of us has those. This is a relatively short presentation to trigger discussion. And I really like to go back to what Nikki was saying. I think the introduction to that captures the work that's been done, the inaction as a result of all those reports and everything, is fundamentally an issue of assigning responsibility for it to someone in the town who can then try to drive it and also pursue resources to accomplish it.
Yeah, there's another point, and that is in thinking about the mayor and the town council. It is clear that resources, meaning the budget, is stretched to the limit. And if we can simply make the point that we acknowledge that inaction is not the lack of will, is not the lack of understanding, is not the lack of realization that we must act, but that we have limited resources. The only way that we are going to get additional resources is to have a dedicated person that will leverage funding sources that other towns, other states are already getting their hands on. Because if there is no budget, there is no mission, period. So I really want to make sure that we don't indict either the current or the past administrations with inaction for whatever reason. I think that would be extremely counterproductive, and I feel strongly about this. But
on the other hand,
on the upside of everything that you guys are talking about, I think it can go a long ways towards, persuading them to hire somebody and do what we're telling them to do.
on the other hand, though, what I heard both Jesse and Victor saying a lot, the word was action. And to me, the thing that we don't want to emphasize is that when we end up, I think the two deadly words for putting things basically in a deep freezer is a report and give it to a committee. I mean, those are basically those things are saying, okay, nothing's going to happen. I think the
Further research.
no, research is good. I happen to believe in research. But anyway, but I think that the emphasis should be on action, and some of that action is going to require obviously careful planning and reports and all that lead up to the action. But I think the end point should be action, such as raising the roads or changing the zoning regulations. These are actions that I think it's a little bit of a 2x4. It's going to get somebody's attention because those things are real things that are going to happen.
Yeah, Mickey, when somebody gives me something to do, and I already have a full-time job and a long list of things to do, my reaction is never to say, no, I'm not going to do that. My reaction is to say, here is my list. What do you want me to take off of this list so that I will happy to do what you're asking me to do? I think the town and all the towns in Connecticut are maxed out, especially with COVID, with absent resources. We can focus on action and all that. But if we can convince them that a resource dedicated to bringing grants and additional resources, that is going to translate into action. And the job description, which talks about accountability and focus on climate change related threats and so forth, are largely there. But they will turn around and say, all right, so what do you want us to not do to start implementing these things? And the answer is nothing, because everything they're doing is absolutely necessary. So I would say focus on getting resources from wherever they are, foundations, federal grants, state grants, whatever.
That was exactly the point the mayor really asked us to focus on, that the town council, they are going, I mean, the mayor and town manager are going to submit that this position should be a part of the budget forward. What she really asked us to do was to come up with exactly what we talked about. If we had such a position, this is in a sense how it pays for itself. It's not that we're asking other town departments to do that, but this person can leverage the funding that will enable those.
Hey, Jesse, it is really, really getting worse and worse in terms of hard to hear you. And I don't know if there's a way that you can adjust the volume in your computer.
When Zell and I, it's all the way up, so it must be something that.
Oh.
Yeah, if you get closer, that works. Yeah.
You have to stay very close, Jesse. That's all it is.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It cuts in and out. I mean, it's really bad.
Now
You're
it's really beautiful. Now she's off the air.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Shut up.
No, you have good things to say. That's why it's a concern.
Do you need to have them repeated, Sarah?
I do. I didn't catch any of it.
Sarah, can you?
Summary, very quickly. Patrice specifically said to us, if you're, I mean, and we've sort of framed this, a lot of things haven't happened because there aren't the resources to make them happen. And so a high priority is hiring someone whose sole responsibility is trying to leverage resources. And I sort of add the liaison to the Green Bank and state and federal funding and all sorts of programs that we're not taking advantage of. And
Right.
then if we go into the specifics that everybody has raised, the degree to which we can present a concrete example of what this person might be able to leverage or do that would pay for that person in benefit to the town.
Should we get together maybe we could have some specific project areas. Circa might be able to give us a few names where grants might be written to, for example. Something like that.
Yeah.
Let me, Jess, you and I can chase on that one. I'll talk to Jim tomorrow.
That would be a great addition. Here's a list of resources.
Don't look so unshaven.
Well, I'm
You know,
not getting close to the camera.
as just as examples. I'm not saying that you ought to do this and this, but it's an example.
Examples,
Yeah.
and other towns have done this. But the degree to which any of us know of those in the areas that we are addressing, that will be very helpful to her in getting the town council's approval of this position.
And the other one, of course, Jess, is the help me, the classification of the town in terms and what it means in terms of insurance costs.
That is in mind, yes. Community
Yeah.
risk system. It's not a
and-
savings up front to the town, but it is to the residents of the town.
Yeah, so that's I think those items like that as an example of the things that they'd be working on.
Okay, other comments?
So Zell, it sounds like you want each of the groups. I mean, first of all, apologies, other than a quick read through, I did not have time, given when you sent this out, to read through your Word documents entirely and to comment back to you. So I will commit to doing that
Okay,
by, end of day tomorrow or something. Then it sounds like each of the subgroups, you want 3 slides that sort of orients people somehow to what the topic area is that subgroup worked on, and some orientation to how they framed it. And then somewhere in the 3 slides, a list of, or a review of, some possible actions that the town might take.
or I'd say examples of possible actions. Yes,
examples of possible actions.
yes.
And then can I get back to the process question on this? Because to me, this is important. Or I wouldn't keep bringing it up. But to me, I really think that either each of the subgroups is going to figure out a process, or we together are going to use the same process of proposing who we meet with, how we do it, how we go about it, but asking for what we want in that. You know, the department has been terrific about meeting with us regularly. They've certainly taken on ownership of helping us get to where we are. I think to work out, I think we need to have some kind of framework ask of what you're now asking and who you want engaged and involved with you going forward. I would favor that we have a sort of blanket template to that we could plug and play with any of the workflows.
I like
Is
your.
that not making any sense? Everybody looks kind of blank.
No. I'll comment on that in a minute. Go ahead, Jess.
Gonna say, I think it's very well, and as you made your comments on that earlier, Sarah, about you know, sort of going forward, what we might do. I think it's a perfect summary slide for the end of this. What we would like to do is get approval or consensus that moving forward on these would involve in each of these areas, town council members who are interested, working with the department, the relevant departments, and that we as a task force would commit to working with those relevant entities to help map out a more specific course forward.
One area, if I can butt in on that, one area that we shouldn't overlook is the education end of things.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because I think the council would benefit from that altogether. I can see them really liking that. I should think they like it.
But I'm going to caution you all about how far you want to lean in, because it can eat you alive.
What's that? I don't understand.
Well,
what you mean.
okay, so if you're going to offer up your services to a department, and they're going to meet during the day, you're then committed to do that. And I just want you to be careful, as I want us to be careful as a group, about not getting too far into that. We'll happily give them advice, we'll work with them, but we've got to be really careful about of doing their job.
I think that's a fair warning. And to me, what that says, Sel, is that we should think about creating a short list of resources, of educational resources that are available. You know, Yale has a whole climate change and human health department. There is in Hartford, there is a environmental justice organization that can talk about differential impact based on some socioeconomic and other factors. And so we don't have to take it on ourselves. But I think it would be fair for us to come up with a short list of resources that the town can leverage to impart education.
Right, but I think
your point is very well taken.
Yeah, Victor. I think that Zell changed the subject, or I heard him change the subject.
Oh,
education was part of it.
Yeah.
The idea that I would be giving lectures, you would be giving lectures, and the rest of it. That's part of it. But I heard Zell say, now going back to the big picture, and we recommend some road racing for flooding events, blah blah. And we have to meet with Public Works or even the planning department. And he's saying, be careful if you get into that sort of a routine, that could eat up a lot of your time, because these guys are not want to do that sort of thing out of the normal workday. That's what I heard you say, Zell.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, look, don't let me stop you from getting involved, but I just I've been there.
We're close.
Be careful. That's
Be
all.
careful what you ask for.
Yeah,
No, what-
exactly.
Well,
He threw a little, Victor, he threw a little curveball at us.
no,
Well, no, I mean,
Fireball.
kind of responsibility to keep the group together. And all of a sudden, if, Boland decides that Stever's stuck him with the Department of Public Works for the next 3 years at 2 meetings a day, he
Not
ain't
likely.
gonna be with us.
Not
no,
likely.
but what I thought you meant, Frank, is public education, not
Yes.
education of technical.
Okay, well, public education is fine.
That's
Public
exactly what
education,
Isn't-
there are tons of resources. We
Yes.
don't have to be the educators.
no.
Going back to Sarah's sort of template and method to our madness, I want to reinforce that well, she and I have had plenty of time to talk about that. The idea of presenting to the various departments, the town departments, the scope of threats and opportunities based on climate change. Clearly, we cannot, and the town cannot take on everything. But what I think Sarah is talking about is saying, let's sit down, let's present the whole portfolio of choices that you have, and let's now, with your input, you tell us where are the areas where we can work in terms of our 2-year, 5-year investment. And this is realistic. We are well prepared. We can do that. But there are 6 out of 10 items that we cannot touch right now. That we can bring to the town and say in a consultative way with town officials, these are our recommendations. And this is what is feasible to do. Sarah, I think this is the process that you suggested earlier. And to me, it sounds very reasonable. You're
Sorry,
a
I muted myself because the dog has been in and out of here and I finally got Ken to take her out.
We want to know what the dog has to say.
I know the dog had a lot to say, but I agree. I mean, I think I don't want us to have to sit down as a group and generate, laundry list spreadsheet of the 105 things that you could do in each of our topics. I don't think any of us want to do that.
Right.
I think we want to generate a kind of pragmatic pick list, and really some of the knowledge of some of the high key options are resides with those department heads in any event. And it's, where are some of the gaps in the town? What are some of the top priority areas? What filter do we put on it to be ready for what the most likely things are that are going to happen in, realistically the next 5 to 10 year period. I mean, 10 years at the broadest point, I think of it.
Well, that was a showstopper.
I
Frank,
guess so.
I've got to sign out. I understand that I'm supposed to be getting 3 slides together and a little bit of a write-up for you to take a look at before you send it over to the council on Monday.
right.
So
I'll get in
what
touch.
time is the council meeting on Tuesday? What
On
time?
Tuesday.
Yeah,
It's
what
on
time?
Tuesday at summer's starting at 6:30, and I'm not sure. I'll have to find out when we're on the list. I had indicated that we would all be there. I hope that can be the case. And actually, both Bert and the mayor would like to have us all there. I mean, they were.
We're only there virtually, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're there the way we're here.
We're going to be zooming in,
Yeah, we're zooming in.
and God knows how many other people will be joining us, but we'll be zoomed in.
Okay, no.
So did you say it's around 6:30? We
Say hello,
start?
folks.
30. Yes. Okay, Frank. Whatever
Bye-bye.
you're doing, have a good time.
Well, that's the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Make the quorum.
Okay, so anybody else got anything they want to talk about here?
So when do you need slides? I mean, what's the latest date? What's the latest time date that you can get our 3 slides?
Before Monday. That's
Before
what they
Yeah,
Monday.
I mean, I would prefer to have them as soon as possible, but yeah, no later than Monday, because we really need to make sure they're all consistent and it looks like we're all working on the same sheet of music.
Right. And one thing I
Okay.
would like to ask, if you have a chance to read the stuff that Seth sent out today, because I think he had some concern about it. Obviously, everything I sent out on energy and built environment can't be included on 3 slides. But if there are things particularly that you don't want me to include because you don't think we have agreement on them, I would like to know that, or you think they're too, I mean, and I already know some of those, some of the zoning things, but just if you have an eye to that, say, ooh, don't say that.
I mean, my guidance to everybody is pick on things that the town government can do themselves, not what they're going to direct town residents and businesses to do. So it's things that they can do, things the town can do, like buy hybrid cars, fix the roads, do something in healthcare, set up green bank opportunities, set up these low and middle income audits, things like that. Things that don't cost the either the town or the individual money at this point, given where we are with the economy and the inability to be able to really communicate with the public effectively at this point. Do you think that's right, Jesse?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think a lot of, yes, I don't need to say more. And you can't hear me anyway.
Yeah, and actually you're hearing.
Well,
Okay.
up to a point, I hear you. I hear your intent. But very soon, anything that the town can do requires resources. And either one, what can they stop doing and shift the priority to what they can do? Or number two, more realistically, where can we find resources to add to the town's budget? And that's where.
Okay,
Or utilize other resources that
exactly.
aren't expensive.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
I mean, I can think of a lot of things I like the town not to do, but I'm not about to say what they are. It's not my job to do that, nor is it our job. That's what we elect the town council for.
Yeah, I don't envision this as either telling them what to do and this is our recommendations, and but I think I would like us to come across as being sensitive to the town's constrained resources.
Absolutely.
And to say it, and that's what can drive our suggestion that they hire somebody, because it will multiply the town's resources. It's
Nope.
not because you haven't done anything and now that we're going to have somebody who will do it. I think that is the wrong side to approach it. I think we need to be on the upside, show the opportunities, show the benefits. And if we can give examples.
I basically agree with you.
Yeah.
I basically agree with you.
Well, I think the multiplier is an important point, but also I think an important point is that by taking action now, over the long term, the town is going to save money by
Exactly.
not having to deal with disaster cleanup when some of that disaster could have been prevented in the first place.
Right.
Yeah, that is an important point, is staging the investments in some sense of the likely return or avoidance of future spend.
Yeah, and that means we present it as an investment, not as an expense.
Correct.
Because if we do, then
I agree.
Yeah, because there is an expense down the line that's even worse, so.
Right,
And avoid.
this is good.
Yeah,
We all agree.
Okay,
I'll condense it.
so, I mean, how long do we have? Because I'm concerned that we're gonna assemble something that we're unlikely to get through. Now, maybe these guys just keep going till they get done, but
they have a amazing ability to sit there and listen and argue.
But
So
yeah,
I would like to try to keep this pretty quick. I would like to have our presentation no more than 20 minutes. And then be prepared to sit there for another half hour where they'll pepper us with questions, and they will do that.
so a 20-minute presentation, you have to have
Maximum.
10 slides max.
Right. And that includes having either you or Victor make a presentation, Frank and Jesse.
Okay, so you need a 10-slide upper limit in order to accomplish
That's
what you're
basically
saying.
right.
Need to aim
Okay.
because,
Okay,
and that's why she wants them to have it sooner.
yeah,
Because she wants to trigger discussion and questions. So, on a slide, you can put additional information down and below the slide that we actually show, but that may be really important for council members who are interested in that to see some of that. We don't have to verbally present it that night.
okay.
Victor, you look frustrated.
No. I like the summary is very good. I think, I was just thinking, the more discussion, the more questions and exchange there is, the better the meeting, the town council will feel that they really had a good meeting. If we just talk and talk, then it's not gonna work.
Essentially, the way you get buy-in is get them to participate with you. And questions is the way to do it.
Right. So I will say, even make them think that this was all their bright idea that they're going to be doing. That's even.
We win when that happens.
Do it in 2 slides, do it in 2 slides.
That's right. Okay, so everybody have their
Marching orders.
marching orders?
Sarah.
Yep. 1-800-VICTOR.
Okay.
That's my.
So
marching
my
order.
only thing is that if particularly Victor and Sarah, if you have a specific area that you think in health, the climate change is really important, bring that out.
Yeah, Sarah, you and I just need to round the
Yeah.
wagons on
Yeah, I mean, I
something.
think what we need to do is, I mean, when we talked about this before, is it's the Zone 4 state of Connecticut
Exactly.
planning. And we just have to pick a couple of examples from that are most germane to, I think, the area we live in and the set of circumstances.
And that large Yale document that is very current that I sent you, we can maybe we can huddle sometime soon and just select from that some examples. And
I agree.
shape.
You remember examples that the town council will be
Would
able
take
to
action on.
do something about.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Good, sir. Oh boy, it's gonna be a long weekend for me. Anything else?
This was a
Jesse?
good meeting, Zell. Thank you.
Just very quickly, because I know you were planning to do this, Zell. I think, 2 or 3 slides is what each of us should be sending to the town council, or for us to send to the town council. But if there is additional information that we might want to be able to display in response to questions, that is going to be far easier for people to understand that way, and you can put it on a slide, I think that's something to have as a backup. And we can send those to Zell too. And I think that's not going to be clear to any one of us until we try to do those initial 2 or 3 slides.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. If you have 2 slides or 3 slides, that's fine. But if you have 4 other ones that relate to points that are likely to be asked, stick them in there and we can just hold them at the end. And then if the question comes up, we can say, oh yeah, Victor had talked about this, slide 8, and we'll go to there. That's all.
Yeah, that takes a little bit of anticipating ask questions that they may ask. And if we have some slide with exhibits that address their anticipated question, that would be, boy, really cool.
You can sort of, I mean, remember you've got a doctor on the council, and you've got a gal who's really concerned about health effects from cancer and stuff like that.
Exactly.
You've got Andre, who's feels he's an environmentalist. You've got a really interesting collection of people there who have different interests. So think
Well,
about that a little bit. I mean, for three-
I always say, Zell, when I present some of my work in my consulting work, the worst thing that happens to me is when they ask superficial questions that don't give me a chance to show the depth of my research, the how far we went. They just stay on the surface. So I would welcome questions and things like that, because I think each of us is pretty steep in experience and knowledge in our respective fields. So I hope they will give us a chance, if they probe more deeply, bring them on. I think that's
Okay.
great.
So Sarah, do you think they're going to ask you about vaccines because you worked at Pfizer?
Yeah, maybe, maybe.
I don't
Well,
know.
get in line, right?
Yeah. So the other thing, I guess, to the extent that you, Sarah and Victor, feel comfortable about just making the point that this pandemic is something of an example of the level of concern that's likely to be experienced going forward, I think that would be appropriate.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else from anybody? Mickey?
Well, it's certainly an example of what happens when you don't plan ahead, and how things are a lot more expensive and deadly as a result.
Yeah, I mean, the difference
Yeah.
is, well, I mean, there's some very interesting parallels, acute versus chronic, and so forth. I mean, I think there's a lot of examples there. So, I mean, letting them think about some of these things, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, the one thing, Jesse, I would love your opinion on this and advice. I'm almost done with Obama's book, and just looking at the detailed plans for a pandemic that were on the shelves, as you would say, Zell, and they were exquisitely detailed.
I thought you said I couldn't say that.
Well, not to the town council, but in this case, you can say it to Trump, and say you managed to ignore that. But the advice and the reflection that I would like you to verbalize is, we have to be careful not to turn this into a political, ideological. This is because the pandemic is a good example of great plans that are not only ignored but sabotaged. And I think, how would you say that politically correctly? And
I think, Karik, we don't really even need to talk about sabotage, but very briefly, and I think it would belong in your slides, we all unfortunately have lived through the last 9 months because we either ignored earlier planning or did no new planning to address the reality of this pandemic and the disastrous results of that. Doesn't have to be finger pointing, but this country had done some planning, but that planning was
Well,
not.
I mean, I think it's also it's also fair to say, God willing, the vaccine will take care of the pandemic. There is no vaccine
For climate,
for climate change.
that's another way to say it, but just, so.
And maybe we could both say that, but from different perspectives. I don't know.
No, I think it's a good point because I mean, you build on people's experience. Our experience in this country has been a disaster over the last 9 months because good planning or lack thereof, because of good planning being ignored or abandoned and nothing replacing it. And we
Yeah.
can't do that with climate.
I mean, I think your point has got to be that it's the council's responsibility to develop the action plan along with the state for climate change. You know, a vaccine isn't going to come in and solve this for you. It's actually their responsibility. They're the ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're the decision. And what we're doing is we're helping them along.
Yeah.
We're the consultant helping them. I mean,
So the book, Victor, I have it here, but I haven't opened it yet.
What is? I'm sorry.
How was Obama's first term book? I have it and I haven't cracked the cover yet.
okay, at your suggestions, I think Jesse's going to see if we can get permission from the author to give the town council the last chapter or the last half of the last chapter to the council so they can read, because this is probably the nicest 12 pages about what this is all about.
Zell, I'll tell you, I get the impression we're winding down our meeting, but I have reached out to authors of a book and invited them to participate in a book club that I was a part of, a reading group. And it's amazing how readily there was a great book called Constantine's Sword that I just called the author and said, look, we're going to be discussing this, a bunch of, fairly smart people. And we would like to invite you to join us. Why don't you call this guy? And well, think about this. I'm not proposing. And I'm just thinking out loud.
That's what Jesse's going to do.
No, I did it with the author of Ocean Country and going to give it a try. All they can do is say no.
Outstanding. I think that is a great consultant, somebody who's published a book and say, this is our perspective. And you are great for taking a proactive approach to this. And again, I'm emphasizing a lot the notion that we have to be very positive, very upbeat, and very enabling, rather than indicting anything that hasn't been done.
No, your point is well taken. I think I've heard what you said. I will be careful. I will be positive, and we'll go forward. And I may get fired at the end of this, so that's okay too. But I'm going to do my best.
Quite the contrary.
So one of the last thing is that, so I will be back to you all with probably more emails about the time and so forth. I would like to see us get PowerPoints together. Don't make them real complicated. Make them pretty simple. Don't do a lot of formatting, because you're asking a dummy here on this end to try to reformat things, and that doesn't work well around this household. And I haven't got any grandkids here to help. And then the other point I guess I'd make is that our next regular meeting is on the 17th of December. So make sure it's on your list. You all agreed to do that at 5 o'clock. So December 17th will be our regular meeting again. Anything else anybody would like to bring up?
So we're meeting on a Thursday. That's what we decided?
Well, we're meeting whatever the 17th is. I think it's
a
on a Wednesday.
Thursday. It's a Thursday. I'm looking
Is
at
it
it.
a Thursday? Well, remember, it's not our regular date, but because of Christmas, we agreed back a year ago,
Okay,
that's when we do it. Now, the other thing I was gonna say about this is that we have to have a schedule for next year. And so at this meeting on the 17th, we'll have to decide what are the 12 regular meetings we're gonna have in 2021. I'll put that in an email to you all too. This is what I get involved with. See, I gotta figure out how to be a secretary, and I'm really not good at that.
It's on my calendar, 17th, 5 to 7.
That's right. And bring your calendar. Anything else anybody wants?
nope. Victor, I'll send you an email with some times.
Excellent. Okay, sounds great.
Mickey, you all set? Jesse?
So Zell, I think on the 17th, we should actually all have a glass of wine together.
We can do it. That would work for me. Okay, well, listen, thank you all, and we'll be in touch over the weekend. And go ahead, Jesse.
One thought for dates next year, it might be simpler for people to just look and say, are any of the Wednesdays that we have been meeting at 5 o'clock a problem? And if we can just go forward with our regular meetings on the third Wednesday of the month as we have, that's gonna make picking dates a lot simpler.
Yes.
So I'm the one that has the conflict there. I now do with something, but I can work around it by I miss the half hour of that meeting in order to join you guys.
If there is
If we
another
move-
week of the week that we go to that can work for
If we
everyone.
move to, if we move to Tuesday, it might help, but I'll have to look at that. I don't want to inconvenience everybody else with it. I can do most of that meeting from 4 to 5. So it just means it's why I get cranky by the time we hit 7 PM because I've been on Zoom already.
So let's
for
keep it
for
other
an
days,
hour.
that's fine. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Part of the reason for not doing it earlier in the week generally, or earlier in the month, is because it means that we then conflict with other task forces, other boards and commissions, and the town council. And to the extent that we can meet when they're not meeting, the better off we're gonna be, because my guess is, going forward, we're gonna be wanting to meet with with people like the Conservation Commission, with people like the Planning and Zoning Commission, because they're going to be key players with some of the details that particularly Jesse and Frank have.
could also look at Thursdays, but that's a discussion.
Yeah, I'll take a look at whether there's a day like a Tuesday or something that solves it, but if that creates more conflicts for others, it's workable.
Actually, for what it's worth, Thursday's better for me than Wednesdays.
Okay, I'll look at Thursday then, if that could work with everybody else.
Okay.
That works for me.
Well, we'll talk about it next time. I'll be on the 17th.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So
So
move.
move.
All those in favor, raise their hand. Okay, we got it. Thank you so much.
Yep.
What-
Bye.
Talk to you all soon.